Gone are the days of weak, feckless, America-last leadership from the Oval Office. The American people are sick and tired of the radical left forcing its woke policies into every facet of our lives.
Worst year in American history for illegal border crossings.
It is inhumane to have a border open like this.
President Donald J. Trump is working tirelessly to implement the America First policies that you demanded. And I'll be by his side all the way.
Biggs, where's Andy? Boy, oh boy, there's a guy. It's tough.
America's golden age has arrived. It's time to make America great again.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Biggs from Arizona's 5th Congressional District. Welcome back to another one of our semi-regular podcasts, What's the Biggs Idea? I am joined today by a great friend of mine, a great friend of the state, and a great friend of the American people. He's an American patriot in my mind. He's one of a kind. He's also, I'll just say this, he is a media superstar as well. So his name is Art Del Cueto. He's a former Border Patrol agent, more than 21 years of service. Throughout most of his career, he was down on the southern border of Arizona, right on the Tohono O'odham Reservation. He assisted with drug and smuggling cases. And when I say assisting, I mean he was assisting to interdict drug and smuggling cases. Yeah, assisting with and responding to shootings, accidents, and agent assaults. I've been down to the border with him many times. He's also served as the vice president of the National Border Patrol Council. You've seen him probably on many major news outlets to talk about border security and immigration policy. He currently serves as the border security advisor for the Federation for American Immigration Reform. And I am so grateful that, Art, you take some time to be with us today.
No, absolutely, Congressman. It's a huge pleasure. And I'm going to tell you, that was quite an introduction. But out of all those, the one I'm most proud of is obviously being your friend, and I've been your friend for many, many years. And I always tell people, you're the real congressman for the Border Patrol agents as a whole. And the reason I say that is, I mean, you say many tours, we say many, I say a lot, whatever it is. We can't put a number because I think we lost count quite some time ago as to how many times you've led and you've been on border tours on the southwest border from Texas all the way to California.
Thanks. I agree. I enjoy our friendship built over and forged over many years. And folks, I'll just tell you, there have been times when Art and I, and we've had maybe some other members of Congress that I took down, and we're driving along the border there, and there's no signal, but all of a sudden, you see out on the distance of the dirt road that we're on, there's 20, 30 people there. I remember one time Art literally standing on top of his truck trying to get cellular service so we could get Border Patrol agents to come in and process these people. We've seen little bitty kids trafficked across. It's just been an amazing experience to go through and see what this was like. And by the way, this goes back before Donald Trump was president, when we were down on the border together. So we've seen it for a long time.
You were even out there once during a shooting. Your wife doesn't want to hear about that one, so we won't go into details. But you were even down there with several congressmen during a shooting. I think we remember hearing the gunshots, and we got out of there just in time.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
you've seen it all.
Another one was when we're standing at the edge, at the end of a fence where you see it was just a little small family group up there. And then the coyotes came down to see what we were doing and talking to us. And there was a tent on the American side where these activists, they've got in multiple languages, including Farsi or Arabic or whatever that was, numbers on and times to wait because there would be someone coming along to pick them up. I mean, it's
that was
astounding
insane
stuff.
Yeah, it is crazy stuff, and I look at it, and you've seen it all. It's funny because you can talk to other people, but you're one of those that has seen it firsthand. It hasn't just been told to you. We're seeing what's happening in Spain, and I've heard people say, "Oh, they said, oh, hopefully it doesn't happen in America." And I tell people how quickly we forgot that was happening in America just several years ago.
Absolutely right. I mean, so what do they have? They had like 49,000 people come to one location in over, I think, a 3, 4, 5 day period. And I think, well, did you guys forget what was happening in Del Rio area?
Right.
And I went down there with Congressman Clay Higgins. We went down there. We got there literally. They had just evacuated most of them out, and we saw firsthand the environmental degradation that had happened. We talked to the medical personnel there, and they told us of all the diseases that they were treating, and all those people, they weren't sent back south, Art.
No,
they were brought into the country.
Yeah, and we don't know where the majority are now.
Right. And so I just wanted to say this, and we're touching on it right now, but if you can expand, go back. I mean, so we've seen it, but pre-Trump one, we saw Trump one during Trump one in 2019 was pretty bad. I mean, remember, we went down to that Yuma facility, and that was rough. Yeah, and then you go to Biden, and then post 2019, it kind of got cleaned up and settled down, and then you get to the Biden experience, and now you have Trump 2. Give us kind of a blow by blow, administration by administration. Barack Obama, Trump 1, Biden, Trump 2.
I can go back to George Bush. I can go all the way back to George Bush era, to be honest. Now I'm dating myself, but it's a roller coaster, Congressman. It's been such a roller coaster, throughout my career. I remember with George Bush in office, we were having groups come across then. And of course, look, the floodgates, I will admit, during the first 4 years, maybe 2 years of the Obama administration, they were pretty good. And then it was just an all-around free-for-all. That's when you started seeing more movement in social media. The cartel started using social media so they can recruit individuals into their ranks. You started seeing more groups come across. And again, they're advertising themselves almost of, hey, these are the routes to take. This is the area to go. You started seeing family units, and then you started seeing the single adults. When President Trump takes over office, the very first day that he's in office, and the policies hadn't changed yet. I mean, he was barely taking over, but just the narrative turns down, the groups coming across. That's a huge deterrent. And the numbers went down tremendously under the first, 4 years of President Trump. And I think that's probably what some of the highlights were when Biden took over, is that the narrative was there. It was a deterrent. And day one of the Biden administration, it's almost like everyone was waiting, standing at the line. And as soon as, hey, he's gone, charge, because that's when we started seeing groups of 300 plus the very day that President Biden was, taking his oath. And that's when we started seeing a lot of the unaccompanied juveniles come across. And you would, I have a story myself. I was out on the Tohono O'odham reservation, and there was a group of 40, all juveniles, that came across. And it seemed that the 12-year-old in the group was the guy in charge and the leader. And if you tried to talk to the other children, he would get in there and he said, hey, talk to me first. And I remember asking him, why now? Like, where have you been? And he said, he was coming from El Salvador. His mom had been here for quite some time. And he said, the reason I'm coming now, and this is a 12-year-old child, he says, the reason I'm coming over now is because your president said we can, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And I mean, little did we know, that was day one. Little did we know how much worse it was going to get from people from, as reported by DHS, people from 168 different countries entered the United States during those 4 years. And it was just a tremendous floodgate. Obviously, we got President Trump back in office now, and he's doing a fantastic job. The numbers have gone down, But again, the bar wasn't set very high. No knock on President Trump, but the bar wasn't very high. It was just an open border situation. But moving forward, we need to realize that we can't forget what happened, and we need to realize that moving forward, we need laws in place in order to stop this, because we can easily go back to what we were before if we don't have the right laws enacted.
Yeah, I mean, so you're talking about Congress has got to codify the policies enacted by President Trump to make that the law. I mean, but I think the one thing that you also alluded to is that you saw from Joe Biden to Trump too, you saw active enforcement of the law.
Right.
Whereas under Biden, we just the law. I mean, it wasn't that the Border Patrol wasn't trying to enforce the laws. That the directives that they were getting were contrary to the law, right? I mean, how do you?
Right, and there was no consequences was the problem. So we all know that asylum exists. You can come and ask for asylum. We get that, but you have to prove that you actually have an actual case. And what opened up the floodgates is under the Biden administration. He said, if you ask, we're going to let you in until we see your case. Well, I mean, what happens there is you have thousands upon thousands, and in the end, in the millions of individuals that said, all I got to do is say asylum. And that's what we were getting. We were getting groups coming across just saying asylum. Some of them, I'll tell you how horrible it was under the Biden administration, and people need to understand this point, is we had individuals that we would fingerprint and actually had prior arrests for serious offenses, including child molestation and child endangerment. But because they had not been convicted yet, they were allowed to file their asylum claim and be released in the United States.
Yeah, I mean that's one of those things where you shake your head at. I mean, it's hard to imagine, and also during the Joe Biden, I know that they copped about 340,000 unaccompanied children that they lost, right? And now it looks like we found about 145,000 of those. But the real number that I was getting from other sources was well in excess of 500,000. I mean, and Art, this is one of the famous cases where they released all these young girls to a strip club in Orlando, Florida. Yes. I mean, and then you had a pedophile that he kept getting kids brought to him. Have you ever seen anything like that at any other time in your career?
No, I mean, it was just a complete disregard for any of our law. Not even for our laws. Let's put the laws aside and the immigration issues, because the laws have been there. I think it was just a completely disregard for morals in this country at that point. Because it's like you said, look, there was young ladies that were being brought across the border. They were being put in, strip bars, and who knows what else. They were being utilized, absolutely, prostitution and everything else. It was just a complete disregard for human life. And that's why it kills me when I hear some politicians get up there and say, hey, we want an open borders. You mistreat the people that are coming across. No, what you do when you get rid of these laws is you create a magnet for more criminal behavior. And the only ones that take, advantage of it is the criminal enterprises, the smuggling organizations, of course, the drug cartels working hand in hand with these organizations. It was just completely chaotic. So that's why, now it's easy to blame the Trump administration and say, well, where were these children? You said you were going to find the children. People need to understand some of those individuals that crossed, especially, the young men that crossed during that area, were 16 and 17 years old. So many of them now, they're adults. And that's what people need to realize. It's easy to point the finger and say, I thought you were going to find them. You know what? We didn't have to go find them if the last administration would not have created that magnet for them to be in the country.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. All the stuff you've seen in your career. And folks, I mean, if we had time, it's so interesting to get Art talking about his early days, early career, talking about some of the other agents that have been down there that have been harmed and injured. Look, and if you go down to the border, if you've been down to the border enough, you're going to see darn near everything, including I've seen helicopter chases of individuals. Yes. Art. I've seen the triangulation down one time down by Naco, They're coming across. They're in the low wash area. You've got one agent up here. They're trying to triangulate them and get the helicopter on top so they can find these people, because they're bad hombres. I mean, as Trump would say.
They are. And you know what? You have a huge advantage. And I'm going to tell you why. Because you've seen all that. But like when we talk about the groups we've seen in the desert, when we've seen, the people that are hungry, they run towards us. You've been there, when they run towards us saying, thank you that you showed up. When you've been in the middle of nowhere with no connection to call somebody, and you're hearing the gunshots go off, people don't understand that. We almost got to dumbify it and sanitize the reality, or else it's so unbelievable.
Well, I mean, it really is. I mean, so I know people, when I've heard you talk to people, and I've heard people say, well, that's just, he's just making that up. Or if I start talking about what we've seen, what I've seen, they're like, oh, Biggs, look at you. You're just a flabby old dude, and you're out there, you're telling me that you saw this stuff. Yes, we've seen all this stuff because it was real and it's unbelievable. And so from your perspective, we've seen tremendous slowdown. I mean, I think we still have problems on the Tohono O'odham reservation.
Correct.
I think you still have a little bit down towards Naco area a little bit, but it's nowhere near what it was. And so what's the policies, what's the operational changes in your mind that have made the biggest difference? I would say the borders is in more control than I perhaps remember seeing in my lifetime, but you're more experienced than me. What's driven that? The policies, operational changes?
I think I think a lot of it is just narrative alone. When they hear, hey, they're going to start enforcing the laws, that changes criminals' minds. I always compare it to when you're out in the freeway and you're speeding. If the state trooper pulls you over, and every time he pulls you over, he tells you don't do it again, you're probably going to do it again. But if the state trooper says, hey, if you're going over 20, I'm going to charge you for felony speeding. And if I catch you speeding at all, I'm going to give you a ticket. You're going to have to pay a fine. That changes your mind about speeding on the freeways. It's the same thing with the borders. When they start seeing that there's going to be true consequences, or you're actually going to have to prove your case, that drops the numbers. Now, as you've said, look, we still have a lot of work to do. Specifically, you see areas of the Tohono O'odham Reservation that are still utilized by the cartels, the smuggling organizations. People need to understand it's been $1 billion industry. So they're not going to go moonlight and do something different. They're going to continue to find new methods, which is what we're seeing still on the southern border. But we're light years ahead of where we were with the Biden administration. But again, I hate to say it this way because it looks like I'm minimizing the work of the current administration, but the bar wasn't that high. Let's be realistic with the Biden administration. But we have more than doubled the apprehensions, and the got-away numbers. They've doubled the apprehensions, but they were so low that we still have to be concerned with the got-away numbers that we still have today, specifically in Arizona. I mean, you know how it is. Look, Texas has done a great job. Their governor out there has done a fantastic job with helping, all the local PDs and the state office, law enforcement to help. But out here, we still have a lot of issues, especially, media-wise. You've been down there, but sometimes the media doesn't want to go out to the Tohono O'odham Reservation or areas south, in Cochise County, because it's so far from civilization. So it's easier to, fly into Texas, near the border, film that, but people don't realize some of the issues that continue to plague areas in Arizona.
Yeah, so so the illegal crossings have dropped, but you still have some gotaways coming through. I want to give you an anomaly, Art, because I don't understand this full. I have an idea. I think I know what the problem is, but so in 48 states, right, fentanyl overdose deaths have dropped, but in 2 states, including Arizona, they've gone up, and Arizona's had a pretty substantial spike. And at the same time, overall, we've seen, the border under much more control. And I know the cartel's still trying to pitch to get in because they make money and everything. But why is there that anomaly in Arizona with regard to spiking fentanyl overdose deaths, where in places also on the border like California and Texas, and even in New Mexico, you're not seeing that increase, you're seeing a decrease?
So unfortunately, I'm gonna base it on my experience and what I've seen. And as you said, look, I worked on the border over 2 decades, but I'm a lifelong Arizonan. I've been on this border my whole life. I often say, I've said it before, and here I got to say it again, but it's a corridor. Andy, this has become the corridor for the drugs that have entered the country. If you go all the way back to the Obama administration, 40% of all the seizures in the entire country were in Arizona, specifically in the Tucson sector. So now you're seeing it decline in California, in areas of Texas, because obviously they've beefed it up and they already have a secure area there with the border. Arizona, again, we have over 60 linear miles. That's been the main corridor for the drug cartels. Specifically, the Sinaloa cartel has worked here, for decades upon decades. They've mastered the game. They've mastered how to come across. Again, look, it's generational. It's grandparents, uncles, aunts, the whole families that are completely involved in the drug trade. So when you bring it through here, it's the main corridor. It's sell it when you can. If we can't get it anymore, up into the United States. That's why you're still seeing the numbers here, and in fact, the numbers go up because this Arizona has become the main corridor where the drugs, and it's just not fentanyl, it's methamphetamines, it's heroin, it's cocaine that continue to come through our nation's borders, specifically in Arizona. And, hey, sell it to who can buy it. And some of the people that are buying it, unfortunately, are losing their life because of it.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent explanation of that. And you touched on something which I think is probably our last area that we have even any time to talk about. And I'll just give context. During the Biden years, we talked about cartels all the time. And we talked about cartels spreading their influence and that their presence throughout the United States in many, if not all communities, but in many communities of any size at all, there's going to be some kind of influence by the cartels. Do you still see that influence? Are you still hearing about that influence? I know that a couple of the Sinaloa gangs, they were fighting over some plazas, and they kind of reached some kind of truce or agreement. What are you seeing with the cartels now, Art?
Look, they're still very much around. They may be, acting in a more low-key way. As I've said, they have to utilize different methods on how to work and how to get things done. But I mean, they're still around. You're still seeing them near the border. It's just recently, I had a group of legislators from another state that came down, and we took them down to areas in Nogales where they had just found a tunnel. And it was during this administration. They found a tunnel down in Nogales. I took them down just so they can see the area and see the reality of the border. They had never been to the southwest border. As we're sitting there looking at everything, I had what I presume from my experience to have been somebody that works for the cartel on the United States side, drive by, filming us, turned around, he was laughing, and just if you saw the guy, you knew he wasn't up to, he wasn't working a legitimate job anywhere. And he just came through, and he was scouting. He wanted to know why we were there. So you're still seeing some of that presence. As I said, look, they're not going to quit. And when they smell blood in the water, I think they act just as bad. And with all the back and forth and the rhetoric, and you have protesters out there that are against law enforcement. You have politicians, even, I hate to say it, but you have politicians that have been out there speaking ill of law enforcement, and at the same time, doing their own videos where they say, we shall not comply, we shall resist, we shall not obey. When people send that message, especially those that are in leadership positions, it empowers criminal networks. It empowers criminal minds to go out there and say, my leaders are saying I don't have to comply or obey. So we're still seeing it. It's not as prevalent as before, obviously, because we have an administration that said we're not going to put up with it, but they're still there.
Yeah, I mean, two quick questions, or one question, one observation. I'll make the observation first. When you talked about elected officials that say this stuff, there is someone running for governor, not in Arizona, but in another state, in a Midwestern state, who said we're going to use force against ICE as a state government. I'm like, that's just absolutely asinine. And then the other thing is, we've been down to, like, say, Nogales and other places. Uh, do they still have some of these lookouts or cartel watch sites on the Nogales, on the Mexican and Sonoran side of Nogales that you see?
Absolutely. Look, I mean, things haven't gotten better in Mexico, right? So that's part of the problem. So you're still seeing some of the individuals that live in the higher ground on the Mexican side. And it seems like when you go to Arizona through our border, all the high ground is on the Mexican side. Maybe we need to acquire some of that.
That's right.
But that's a topic for another day. But yeah, they still have the high ground, and they're still very much vigilant, and they're watching what the agents do and the traffic and everything else. And when you look into more remote areas in the middle of the desert, you have still the spotters that'll cross into the United States. They camp out in some of these tall mountains, and they're watching us from the U.S. itself.
This is just amazing.
And then you got the drones. Andy, then
Yeah.
you've got the technology and the drones, which is a completely different animal. And I know that there's laws that have been trying to be pushed in the state of Arizona where law enforcement, sheriffs and police officers can shoot and take down some of these drones. But we got to remember, federal law still prohibits, federal agents from taking down any unmanned aircraft. And it's law enforcement in the federal side that are pretty much patrolling the areas where these drones and unmanned aircrafts are crossing into the U.S.
Yeah, and I heard that in the Rio Grande Valley area is where they have thousands of drone incursions every day down there.
Yes. Yes.
Which is more than we have here in Arizona. But I heard that RGV is just really inundated constantly. Maybe Del Rio, going up to Del Rio even.
Yep, and no one's doing anything about it.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Well, Art, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us and watching this. The point is, we're better situated than we've perhaps ever been, but we still have meat on that bone. We've got to take care of it. Arizona needs to fight it out and make sure that we secure our border, and cooperate with the federales on our side, right? I mean, that's really
absolutely. We can't be complacent. We were complacent before, and we lost it overnight. We can't be complacent moving forward. You hear people say, "Hey, the last election was the most important." And you've heard me say it 1,000 times. Every election moving forward is important for the country, for the states, for everyone involved, because we can't lose it overnight.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say before I go is, you have a lot of the Democrat socialists that are now running, and actually one of their planks is to eliminate the Senate, eliminate law enforcement, eliminate the border. I mean, that's really what their plank is, and that's not getting political. It's just saying that's why we have to be vigilant. We have to be vigilant on the border, make sure we enforce the laws. When you enforce the laws, then you have the rule of law. You have freedom. You can be free people if you enforce the laws, because and ostensibly you get rid of bad laws, but you protect the rights and freedoms of the people. But I thank you for your service, Art, and thanks for joining us today. And best to you and your family. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Be sure to join us next time on our semi-regular podcast, What's the Big's Idea? Thank you.
Thank you.